building a business is a bigger task than settling down. But there are both the challenges which you precisely faced. How did you overcome those?
That is one of the biggest misconceptions that people walk in with and say, let's open the same business out there. So what we as Upsonomy try to provide you is the, like you said, the nuances, the language.
Products are not changing. What is changing, if you can elaborate on that?
Now the biggest difference comes in of how you promote that product. Now if I'm going to sell chai in the US, maybe a few people will understand, but chai tea latte, when it goes to the tea latte, it gives them an extension to understand that more clearly.
Does this international exposure has helped you in your leadership style?
Strong core means what are your core values as an organization? My core value is honesty. My core value is giving the added value to an organization.
What is that one thing that people should not worry about?
Effectively, depending on the kind of
Welcome back to the Collaborative Canvas. I'm your host, Ankesh Saxena, and today's conversation is both personal and global. Joining me is someone I have known since our early days at Greenfield, Pratik Sharma, now the CEO of Upsonomy, a consulting firm based in Germany that's helping companies crack the code to international success. With over 2 decades of experience leading into strategic operations across Europe, Pratik is on a mission to unlock global growth for businesses by reaching hard to get clients, enabling confident international expansion, and providing part time C level expertise to sharpen strategic directions. In this episode, we are going to explore two big ideas: unlocking global potential, how do cultural differences open doors to businesses opportunities, and the abroad advantage. How is it living and working overseas truly a game changer in leadership and growth? So let's dive in right in. So welcome, Pratik.
Thank you very much for having me, Ankesh.
Yeah, Pratik, thank you so much for making time out during your visit and talk about a lot many things that I have on the plate, and we really wanted to know how things are taking the shape. But I know a lot of people actually know you, and there are a lot many who really wanted to know who Pratik is. So how about we start with your introduction?
Sure. Well, I've been in the industry almost about 24 years or so, but been working for much longer. So the experience goes beyond just market research. Started with a very, I would say, challenging career. A few challenges in my life, but then getting onto market research completely kind of never let me out. So it was one of the things which I loved. I sincerely was a big fan of and never could get out of this industry, as a lot of people we know who don't come in with the mindset of joining this industry, but they cannot get out of it ever. So I love the industry, been a long time in the industry, changed many, many different large companies, small scale companies. And my main focus has always been developing business within and internationally as well. I moved almost 19 years back to Germany, which has been extremely positive and a fortunate step for me because it gave me a lot of exposure from the perspective of the Western world. Been dealing with a lot of US companies since the beginning, as you and I have worked together also in an American company before, which was always remained as a core. And that gave me a lot of length in terms of getting more global. And recently worked with a Japanese company, which covered my whole global perspective. So it gave me a whole global perspective of the world, which makes me a global citizen. So that is exactly what Pratik is, and I have been trying to nurture this experience of mine to develop and work with a lot of companies that are looking for international exposure, international establishment, and growth.
So what is the idea behind Upsonomy?
Upsonomy is basically a full bucket of all my experience and my partner's experience, Brent. We have put it all together in one bucket, which is the experience of building businesses, businesses that are struggling to support those businesses, find out avenues how we can get them out of this situation. Upsonomy also caters to the fact that it gives you the advantage of reaching markets that are not reachable because we have that span within us. That's why we have 2 offices, which is Germany, which is covering Europe. We have the US office, and of course, our exposure for the Asia market as well. So, Upsonomy is basically there to give you the lending hand or the support to expand yourself in a more experienced way from an outside consultative perspective.
So, what exactly the meaning of Upsonomy for you, and why this magical word came into the play as a name of the company?
I would say Upsonomy came into existence in a very modest way, which was operations made, you economize your operations. How to economize your operations to make sure that your operations are not only, so ops is operations, onomy is the part of the economizing it. But definitely the fact of the story is we wanted to make sure that we give the perspective of external growth, external overview of a company, because what happens is when you get too deeply into the business, as a businessman, you are very internally focused on the business. You forget the outside perspective. And that's what Upsonomy tries to provide you, is the out-of-the-box thinking and outside perspective. So the magical word is already explained, but there is more to it, which we are trying to kind of bring out into this business.
And we'll come one by one onto that.
Sure.
But the first question to start with, you moved to Germany almost 19 years ago.
Yes,
Not a place that everybody would wanted to go there.
absolutely.
And considering the cultural barriers and other misconception people generally have about that region, and specifically known to me is that language.
Yes.
So how did you cope up? And building a business is a bigger task than settling down. But there are both the challenges which you precisely faced.
Right.
So what were those initial challenges, and how did you overcome those?
That's a very good question, and I'm not going to shy away from the truth and fact of it. It was a great opportunity. Language was absolutely a challenge. Culturally, I was familiar with the culture because of the background where I come from. My family has been exposed to a lot of Germans and British, so I knew slightly what the culture is. But getting into a country with your family, and I didn't go there when I was young. I went there when I was almost 30 or so. So definitely it's not like, I started my career there or my life over there. But getting over there, the biggest challenge that I ever faced was understanding and accommodating to the culture, not the language. Language was secondary. It's the culture. From our beautiful culture of India, which is certainly different from the culture in Germany, the basic thing which was challenging was the discipline, which means the discipline to be on time, the discipline to say a no, the discipline to understand and being very clear and not being vague. That was a bigger challenge than the language for me, personally. For my family, it was much easier to consume the language very quickly. But for me, first, it was adjusting to the corporate world of Germany or corporate world of Europe. Because Europe in itself is multicultural, right?
Yeah.
You go from Germany to UK, you wear a different hat. You even go from Germany to Austria, which is right next door. Within 1 hour I can reach there, but you wear an extra or a different cap over there. Because culturally they're so varied. But imagine now going from India to Germany was understanding that basic manners, basic etiquettes, the basic discipline. And I'm not saying that I had to kind of change my life, but it was different. And you had to accommodate. If somebody said 1750 we will meet, it is 1748. So that is one of the things which was definitely a good eye-opener for me.
Well, I think that's part of the etiquette and manner as well. When you commit to a certain time, if you reach 5 minutes earlier, it's always a good pleasure.
Absolutely.
Rather than coming late and we call it IST.
I know. We get into the details of it, yes.
Quick, another thing, since you moved to Germany 19 years ago, you've seen how global markets actually work. Back those days were definitely challenging. Many organizations were not able to step into a global market kind of a position until it's a very big organization. And I remember that was, I think, Chow when you
Yes.
moved.
Chow Service,
So,
yes.
There are a lot of brands who really wanted to expand to a global market, and
Yes.
they understand there are a lot of misconceptions.
Yes.
And if I really go opsonomy, ops and economically way to enter a new market, what are the major misconceptions that companies actually face, or they think that it's not possible for us to get into a market which has so many issues like language barriers, cultural barriers, understanding the other nuances. What would How would you understand and make other people understand these misconceptions are not there?
So one of the basic things that I would say over here is very important to understand. People tend to understand that common sense is universal. Common sense is not universal. Common sense is sense of the culture. I think that's one of the most important things we need to understand as business owners, as I don't know, as people who work in the corporate world, is to understand first of all. When you try to do a Google Translate, for example, when you say, oh, this is working for me brilliantly well in India, I'm sure it's going to be a huge success in, let's say, the UK. Culture is quite similar. People are quite known about, they know the facts about India. They're quite similar. It's going to work brilliantly well. That is one of the biggest misconceptions with people walk in with and say, let's open the same business out there. So what we as Upsonomy try to provide you is the, like you said, the nuances, the language, the, now what is culture? Culture is basically language, traditions, brought down from, generations to generations. For you and me to understand their culture is not easy. And you don't need to, but you need to get blended into that to understand and be sensitive to that. That means you got to be more of an active listener than a loudspeaker.
Pratik, quick one thing which I recall right now from one of
Sure.
the conversations that I had. But before that, I mean, I think the fact is that when you have local presence, it becomes easier.
Yes.
But the fact is, a lot of products have an X name in one country, and same product being sold to with a Y name in another country.
Yes.
How does that products are not changing? What is changing? If you can elaborate on that, what is changing so that people are actually buying it from the cultural standpoint? Because that's where we would love to understand what is that unexpected business win that they can expect if they open up their shop in that country.
I can only think of a very basic example. India prospectively lives on chai, right? You go to Starbucks, it's called chai tea latte, right? Now the biggest difference comes in of how you promote that product. Now if I'm going to sell chai in the US, maybe a few people will understand, locals or
Analyze.
people who exposure to the globe, they'll understand. But chai tea latte, when it goes to the tea latte, it gives them an extension to understand that more clearly and relate to the product. Now, I'll say what biggest mistake people think is Chayos or whatever. I don't want to name any companies specifically. Will work very well in Germany too, for example. They don't even know what that is. They don't even have an idea of what that is. But they do have an understanding Indian masala tea, for example,
Okay.
right? It's all about how you promote that product from X to Y, as you mentioned as an example, how you promote that product. And of course, remember one thing, the flavor changes as well. You and I might like ginger and aniseed tea, but maybe it's not effective in international market. I'll only like ginger, or people hate ginger out there. I'll mix the ingredients, but my basic tea leaves will remain the same. So the core of the business remains the same, but you blend into the culture according to what is accepted in that culture.
So considering that culture becomes the bigger evident solution that, or probably something which people really need to understand before entering into a new market.
Totally. So
Or is there anything else?
no. I mean, so there are two things to it. Number one, culture. So when you talk about culture, I basically call myself a cultural detective when I go to different markets. When I started business in Romania, I needed to find out what's the difference between Romania and Germany. When you look at it from outside perspective,
We see Europe as Europe.
Europe is Europe, exactly. And no, it's not like that. When you are there, you realize Europe is Europe as a united front. But inside, it's like India with a lot of states with languages that we don't even understand when we go down south. And because we don't speak that language, they don't understand a lot of things on our end. It's not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's a difference. And you got to respect that difference. So when I was giving an example of Romania, for example, when I went to Romania, I could relate to them even more closely because they are very warm people. They're very outgoing, same as Bulgaria, very, how can I say, open to ideas, but you got to use them in the right way, how you use them. But yet, our core values remain the same, that discipline needs to be there. And they understand that, but it's how you translate it to them.
So, Pratik, one thing which is common across all the European markets, whether it is Bulgaria or Romania, one thing which is very common that you have identified because you spend so much of time in the Europe.
Yeah.
What is that one thing other than discipline? Of course, that's pretty evident. What is that one thing that people should not worry about?
I
And you
think-
see the same thing in when people expand.
I think the biggest thing which I can identify as Pratik is the international exposure. They have a varied amount of exposure, not only to the European market, but to the Western world, to the US, to Asia. Their exposure is massive. Because of that, when you start working with them, you do realize that they understand the international market very strongly. The second thing which I can add on is the richness of multi languages. They can speak a lot of languages. They can speak Italian, they can speak French, they can speak German, they can speak Spanish. And it is a huge advantage in terms of a international business. I'm not trying to criticize, the others cannot. But it's just that their fluency is so natural that they could be plugged in and utilized in the best manner possible because they are very open to it. And they are very kind of accommodating to the fact of it as well. So, for example, I'll tell you, like a French probably would never like to work with a non French person. But when they understand that these people are speaking almost in the same accent as them, and they are also very flexible, they rely on these people more than sometimes their own because the flexibility joins in. So that is what I would say is one of the biggest advantages: exposure.
And that's a great example. I mean, French with a French accent would go with the French, understanding or probably, the kind of a relationship they're building upon.
Right.
You're more local nowadays with being, living in Germany and then,
Yep.
So let's try to understand, that how globally efficiency Upsonomy brings to anybody who wanted to get into that market, considering specifically, we're not talking about US or Europe, US or any other market for that matter. We're just talking about Europe at this point. Because that is very diversified market in terms of language, in terms
Yes.
of culture. How does Upsonomy is going to help anybody who really wanted to step into, through you, into the European market and capture the biggest overall market through Europe, in Europe?
Right. So in this case, we go back to the topic of experience and exposure. So thanks to the Almighty. I mean, definitely the exposure that I've gained within Europe is massive, and it's really been very, very, how can I say, in a modest way, enriching experience for me personally. Upsonomy gains that advantage because I can give you an example. So, for example, if a new company is stepping into Europe, now they're looking into Europe as a whole, and they say, "Hey, let's get some very economized kind of a possibility in Romania and hire a lot of, how can I say, technical people, and grow the market out there." Now, the first thing I would say is, hold on. Romania is extremely enriched with services, personalized services. Number one, because of the language. Number two, there's a lot of people on the younger side who are very keen to expose themselves to English, to French, to German, whatever they want to get into, and they want to give that service. But if you talk about technicality, I would say let's go to Bulgaria instead. I'm not saying that Romania is not so good, but there's always a plus and a plus plus kind of a thing. So we go to Bulgaria for the technical part. If you want services, let's go to Romania. Let's get it out of Romania because the language skills are much more smoother out there. Bulgaria has developed quite a bit now, but it is still developing a lot.
So the another question would be from the client is that, what is the cost difference between both the countries?
Effectively, depending on the kind of services that you're looking at, they're quite in par. But as I mentioned, Romania is a more matured market. So the costs are slightly higher as compared to Bulgaria at the moment.
So you're saying that, every different market has their own capabilities,
Yes.
which Upsonomy knows about.
Yes.
So considering that if you really have to suggest Austria, Moldova, any other region,
Right.
what are those elements that you would probably identify? And the second point is, so I come to Upsonomy to capture the market. So reaching the unreachables,
Right.
and really have to find out those hard to reach clients. How's in both the cases Upsonomy can help the clients?
So again, like I said initially also, one thing very important that one needs to understand when you reach out to Upsonomy is using our richness in the culture, understanding, using our experience which has been working all this while. It's not only the experience of knowing the culture, it's the working atmosphere too. I've been very fortunate to develop teams over there, increase their capacities, expose them to a lot of different businesses, which is, I'm not talking about different businesses in the sense of different kind of businesses, but different departments, let's say operations, sales.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I've been
when you
fortunate.
went to through Chow to Germany, it was not an easy task, to be there, develop the team, build up new clients, and knowing that you just only know the language of India.
Right, right. And that's what it is, because that's what I need to understand and make everybody understand that too, is that one needs to really understand the depth of it in terms of when I went there. I'm just going to take a little diversion. When I went there, imagine me being an Indian, living in Germany, running a US business was the most varied kind of a situation that I landed up in.
And which
to
is
be
why
honest.
Pratik is global now.
That's
not
why I
Indian.
call myself a global citizen.
Yeah.
I don't call myself like a normal, just one citizen or one kind of a place. That's why I call myself a global citizen. So explaining this to different companies or even the banks when we open companies was so challenging for me. They're like, okay, wait a second, but you live in Germany, coming from India, you're looking after the business, you're building a business of a US business in Germany and in Europe. How are we going to do this? So it is that exposure that kind of helped me to get into the right track, to be honest with you. And again, I think what is essential for you and I to understand, like you asked that question, Upsonomy gives you that kind of already experienced situation and gives you the right guidance into the direction which we've made mistakes on, how to avoid those mistakes to start with. And I think those are one of the most crucial decisions that a business owner needs to take right at the beginning. If they see the slightest of situations where they are kind of not working out, even if it's a 1 year period, 2 year period, they're like, oh, come on, let's withdraw ourselves from this market. It's not working out. But the problem is you have not been into the depth of it and you've not even studied what could have changed. I cannot name businesses, but I can tell you a lot of businesses give up very soon without even investing into the people. And again, what I always say, which is very interesting way of putting it, is you need to be a chameleon with a very strong core. What does that really mean? Usually chameleon is taken as a negative.
Yeah.
But I would say strong core means what are your core values as an organization? My core value is honesty. My core value is transparency, which is also similar to honesty. My core value is giving the added value to an organization. That's my core value. And what is a chameleon? Chameleon is more the skin, which means where you blend into that atmosphere, you blend into that business and understand the people first. There are different countries that have different followings. A lot of companies have a following from up to down. That means whatever the up decides goes down to the team. But there are a lot of countries which have also got down to up. Those are like open-minded countries, organizations, which give the opportunity to the people at the bottom to express themselves and make you understand what is going wrong at the bottom. I believe in bottom to up. So you got to blend in, you got to understand the people, what are the core problems. As a management, you only see it as an helicopter view. But from the bottom, you see the grounded view. What you really see is what is happening on the ground.
And for the unreachables, if the client wanted to expand those markets and try to find out those clients which can bring the business to them, how Upsonomy is helping them out.
So in that case, again, we are the transporters basically. I mean, from both ends, right? So we are the ones who are convincing our clients, I trust them, you need to trust them too. That's the face of Upsonomy that you got to trust and believe in. If there is anything which is a doubt, it's me you have to ask. Same goes for the other side as well. I trust this client and things will go smooth, I promise to you, and we'll make it happen for you. So it's like a middleman standing and making sure that you're assured that this works. Now, to answer further on this, it's again the biggest advantage that I could say Upsonomy can provide is getting the right people together, not only for business, but also for mergers and acquisitions. Now, there could be a two-person's company sitting in India or sitting in Bulgaria who are the most brilliant mind on this earth, but would a company like Kantar or larger companies, would they even know them? No, never. And do those two people have the confidence to walk up to their office and say, hey, we are here, we can give you an added advantage with my new AI production, and I can give you a huge advantage. That's where Upsonomy sits in and says, all right, explain your product to me first. Okay, I know that X company has been looking into this for a long time, but you don't know them, let me speak to them. So we try to fill in that gap.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And you mentioned a lot of businesses have actually failed to understand, or probably that at a place where they make a decision that they really wanted to go for a global expansion, and then they fail because there could be multiple reasons that they've not understood the culture, they're not fitting into the way they should be. So if I really, as an Upsonomy, if we really have to find out what kind of a clients we should go about, and what is that right client who should actually think of that global expansion needs to happen now, or probably if they've started a business, they should come say in 2 years, in 1 year. What kind of planning that the company should do in when they think of global expansions?
So I think one of the most, so if your question goes in the way to say that what should be planned before you
Think of going
expand
global.
yourself
Yeah.
into a global situation, I think one of the most important to think about before stepping into the global expansion is your own product. Is it really a global product? Is it really going to be something that has a capacity to expand in the global market? Again, without naming companies, there have been a lot of companies that have launched things, as I mentioned right at the beginning, have launched their products into the markets which do not even relate to those products. And it has done fairly okay, but has it been a success? No, not at all, because we didn't think through of that product being a global product. That's number one, the most important thing to think about before you step into a global market. Number two, I would say, and it sounds very basic, but people do forget this, because the success is so much that you think this is going to be a success across, because people guide you in that direction. Oh my God, you've done so well. Why should it fail? No, it's not the why. It should be what is it that you need to do to make it a success, but think beforehand if it will be a success. That's one of the most important things I would think about to begin with. I think the second would be the length of the product. How long do you think that product is going to even last locally first? Do you really think that product is going to be a success throughout? We've seen a lot of brands flourish for 5 years, 6 years, and then we don't even know about them anymore. So what's the longevity or the longevity of this product that you're trying to introduce into? Because investment into the global market is a big investment.
Exactly.
It's not only infrastructure, it is also the investment of the future. It is your name that goes into the market. There are a lot of companies I respect personally which remain local till the time they have exploited their localization. And then they step into the global market. Why? Because they are purely believing in their core and they don't want to change their core, even if they know they can earn more money out of the globalization. So you really need to believe in your product, number one, that you can make it global. Number two is, again, I'm saying Upsonomy here because I'm representing Upsonomy. You need to get the right people on board to give you a market overview before. So it's one of our additional jobs that we do as well is give you a market overview of the different markets that you're stepping into. What kind of market is it? If your product is going to work over here, yes or no, based on examples, based on experience, based on certain research work done on it, you're trying to do that. You're trying to expose yourself and try and understand that of how you want to get in there. So I think that is a very important factor also to consider. Don't just step into a market because you think locally the product is a success, as I mentioned clearly in the beginning.
I think that this definitely makes sense because considering that you're getting into a market and you barely know anything about it, the product nuances, the cultural nuances, the manpower resources, everything needs to be considered at first hand. And I think understanding from you that there's a lot of gap any company needs to fill at the very first of its thinking, or even before even thinking that they really wanted to go global. Now, Pratik, let's go back again and understand from you, because you spent 30 years in India.
Right.
And then moving into a country which is like way beyond the cultural limitations that we used to have. You've spent time in Romania, you're living in Germany, and it's been more than 19 years as such. And how does this international exposure has helped you in your leadership style?
I would say it has super powered my enhancement in leadership. It's like saying a frog in a well and a frog outside. Definitely, it gave me a lot of opportunities to understand the different perspectives of people, how they think. Very easy to say for me, oh, India has given me great exposure. And yes, that created my base. I'm never going to forget that. That created my base in terms of modesty, in terms of being more generous, in terms of, in a very polite way, saying never to say no, but being a little bit vague about it. Oh, of course it'll be done. Yes, of course it'll be done. Although my heart is very clear, it's never happening. So I think and again, it's not a negative that I'm speaking, but that's how we've been brought up, right? But when you get into the other side of the world, you realize if you try and live with that, it's only going to make you not sleep, have sleepless nights, because you know it's never going to happen. And you're trying to make it happen. So one thing that I definitely give it to Germany is the ability to say no is very important. I've learned to say yes in 10 languages, but I've learned to say no in 100 languages. And when I say no, it does not mean a negative, it's how you say the no as well. I'll give you a very nice and a beautiful example of the recent exposure that I got with the Japanese. Now, the Japanese are somewhat similar in their nature, not to say no like the Indians, but they're very polite as well. So I was having a very good friend of mine. We were having discussions, and always it was like, yes, Pratik, this is a great idea. I think you should go with it. But I think, you should think of this direction too. So one of the evenings when we were drinking together, I asked, what does that but mean? And literally the answer was, but means a no. So that is something which I can say, because I'll come back to the leadership thing. That is one thing I realized. So the but means a no. So if my ideas were brilliant, but comes in, it means a no. That's a polite way to say no. So I think that gave me a good understanding of knowing how different cultures work in different ways. And again, it's only thanks to the exposure, and it's only thanks to the kind of expansion that I had in my life with all these different cultures and everything, which enhanced totally my capability to manage different people in different ways. And I think that was very essential for me. So I think my leadership style, as I mentioned to you, goes bottom to top. That was something I completely changed in my thinking, is to understanding what really is happening on the ground. You can see it from the upper perspective. Oh, we should include more people into the business. We should maybe hire 7 people. But why? Why are we going to do that? Do you really think we really need those kind of people? If you ask the team, they're like, no, Pratik, I don't even think we have that much of business in that direction. But nobody's interested in listening because they think the perspective is a very kind of a low level kind of a perspective. But that's where you want to sit down and listen to everyone. So when I go out with every single person because I learn things. I'm still learning. I still learn a lot from people. And I'm still learning and I want to learn more. So it really gives me that added advantage to understand. I know who their wives are, who their girlfriends are, dogs are, kids are, because it's very essential for me to also give them that exposure about my life too, because we become friends forever.
Yeah.
And it's a very small world. Our industry is like a little minute little world.
Couldn't
Look,
disagree anymore on
you
that.
and me, like look at you and me meeting after so many years and coming and sitting across on this
Yeah.
on this platform.
And you made a right point that, it's definitely a small word. Now you've been an entrepreneur and living abroad. Has that given you an executive edge in your business?
I would say yes, it has, because the amount of grind, the amount of understanding in many different ways that I've been through does give me that advantage to understand the mistakes I should not be making. And when I look at the perspective of the executive perspective, yes, it gives me an edge because I definitely have catered to those positions. I definitely have been on those positions and making some of those decisions. I mean, I'll be honest. I mean, Greenfield was one of our basics and base. They always made you into entrepreneurs. They always made you understand the perspective, and I've been very thankful to those 2 people which have lived in my life, you and Keith, because they have definitely given me that openness and that opportunity to think like an entrepreneur. And that was one thing which is, again, I would say comes from a cultural thing, right? Because we always think, no, we're going to be just working. But saying, Pratik, you got to take this decision on your own. You take it on your own. And that's when you already start blending into that. So it does give me an advantage on my business for sure to understand that.
So is it more like a mindset or a geography?
I would say it is more of the mindset. Geography can keep changing. I'll give you an example on this. You could be one of the biggest, how can I say, backpacker, right? You could be the biggest backpacker going around the globe, running around everywhere, looking at different perspective, but you could be very narrow-minded. Oh, I've got to see A, B, C, D, and that's my city done. I've seen the city, it's so beautiful. I've seen on Google, I saw these 4 places to see. I've seen it, now I'm done. But you could also be having a mindset of saying, let me go with the flow. Let me explore myself more into the places which are not registered here, because that I can find all on the web, not an issue. Let me explore more a little bit. That gives you a different perspective. So it's the mindset for me more than the geography, for sure.
So, considering it's a mindset, somebody wanted to consider going global, like, as in making a global expansion. What is that one thing they should absolutely get it right when they're scaling globally? Now we're considering from the fact that the leadership style we talked about, the executive style we talked about. Now you know the market entirely. One single advice that you would give somebody who's scaling globally and should be very mindful of.
Again, I will 100% go back to the fact it's to have a very, very open mind. When you step into a global market, you cannot be with a mind saying, I believe it works for me in the US. I 100% believe it's going to work in India the same way. Your mind has to be more flexible. Your mind has to be more open to adapting to those changes, which could be coming from a person who's serving you a coffee on the table, which is a privilege in India. And you could learn something from that person as well of how to change your business into a more local business. People forget this, to be honest. They will only reach out to those people who've always been managers in those companies. because they feel like, they are the ones who are knowledgeable. And yes, they are knowledgeable. I'm not challenging their knowledge, but they are very internationally manage their lives, and they're very international in their behavior. They need to understand from the local. Let's give an example. I go and ask a project manager on the table, why are you late today? Oh, sir, it was traffic, it was this. First of all, that sir comes in between. It was traffic. Don't need that, sir. I'm Pratik. Just let's be friends and let's talk about it. It was the traffic. No. I know you left late. Simple as that. There's nothing more. You can always plan your life better. You understand at that point of time that this is an important factor to engage in your plan when you set up a business in any country where they are not able to make it on time. We want to work on this in a very professional and a smooth way to make them understand time is money and time is respect. If somebody is taking out the time to be there on time, there is a reason why it is. So I think one needs to understand this from the base rather than from the top. Because you'll always hear from yeah, of course, this is scalable. Absolutely, we can make this happen. There's no issue about this. Oh, we've got the manpower. Very, very cheap manpower. No, it's not about the cheap manpower. We are talking about, is that the manpower you really need or you don't need, kind of a thing.
Got it. I think unlocking the global potential and taking an abroad advantage, it's not just a piece of a cake, but you really have to understand from the perspective as to what is that you're bringing onto the table. There are a couple of things that we actually talked about. One is the global advantage comes from the product that you're pushing the boundaries of, and whether it is the product that the other country would actually buy or not. So other than not just this, there are several other things: nuances, cultural nuances, the way people getting hired, what kind of a teams do you need to buy, or you need to set up the company on. I think that's where you can seek the expertise of Pratik. And thank you so much for putting up a lot of effort in coming here and talking about how things should work on. And if you have any questions thereon, you can reach out to us, and or I'll give you the descriptions of Pratik at the end of the video, in the description as well. So you can reach out to him as well. One last question, Pratik. I know you came to India to meet your family, but I'm sure you must have a few meetings lined up as well.
Sure.
What is that one advice that you have given them before, specific to Indians? What is that one advice you have given to them when they think of going global?
So if India wants to go global, I think one of the biggest advice that I would give is make sure that you get uncomfortable. I think that's one of the most important things. Make sure you get uncomfortable from the perspective of the comfort completely changes.
I agree.
So that is one of the most important things from an Indian perspective, to understand that everything is not going to run the way you want it to run. It's going to run the way where you are going to establish yourself is the way you need to run it. And I think that's very important for us to understand.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Pratik.
Pleasure.
It was such an enlightening conversation, and I'm sure there are a lot of people who would like to have more conversations around it. So whatever questions we'll get, I will reach out to you with that.
Love to answer those questions for sure. Thank you so much, Ankesh, for having me over. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. That's an incredible journey that we just heard from Pratik, from managing multicultural teams and building global businesses from scratch to now helping others do the same with Upsonomy. Today's conversation has left us with a powerful reminder. Global isn't just about geography. It's about a perspective. When we embrace cultural nuances and seek out complexities, that's where the real growth happens. To all our listeners, if you're planning to go global or simply thinking bigger about what next, this episode is a blueprint for you. And don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to the Collaborative Canvas. And until next time, keep collaborating and keep painting the new pictures. Thank you.